Hello and welcome to Tech Deals. This is Star Wars Battlefront 2 on a rather old computer with a relatively new graphics card, 1080p, medium detail. I'm going to show you two battles here, DirectX 11 and 12, and why you definitely should not be playing this game in DirectX 12. It came out in 2017, that was a very early era. This is an RX 6600, which at the moment can be purchased for about $230 new. It is a great value for the money, far more so than the $1,000 graphics cards out there. Those are amazing, but they are quite expensive. Here we are averaging over 100 frames per second. Our rolling average is 108, the 1% low is 40, and you can see the real-time numbers up in the upper left-hand corner of the screen, and the very, very choppy frame time graph. This is a good example of why, if you don't have the best of the best hardware, it is very important to play around with settings and to find something that works well for you. In this case, turning the detail down to medium doesn't do it. Turning down to DirectX 11 does. For whatever reason, DirectX 12 was never optimized in this game. It was never fixed or cleaned up, or whatever it is, just doesn't run well. Now, of course, on an i9-13900K, this would be butter smooth and perfect. You throw enough horsepower at anything, and typically you'll overcome any limitations. That is why I'm going to show you the DirectX 11 version here in just a second. Now, they are not on the same map. It's not the exact same battle. These are not recordings. These are live gameplay, so in fairness, there's always going to be a bit of a difference. Before we get to the DirectX 11 part, though, I want to call out some numbers in the upper left-hand corner. Now, this is a 2017 game. Notice that we are using just under 4 gigabytes of VRAM. We have an 8 gigabyte graphics card, but it is not necessary at 1080p medium detail. Honestly, it wouldn't be necessary at 1440p medium either, although if you crank it up to ultra and turn everything up, it'll use a bit more for sure. Our main system RAM usage is 11 gigabytes. It'll run in 16 so long as you have nothing else running. If you are a single task user, close everything in the background. This is a good example of a game that runs fine in 16 gigs of RAM. I would hope so. The game came out in 2017. If you are multitasking, multiple monitors, doing something else, recording, live streaming, etc., I cannot overemphasize the point that you should all have 32 gigs of RAM today. The video card usage is relatively light. Our card is only being used about 50%, so we certainly could crank the detail up a little bit. This shows you how much of a CPU bottleneck that i5-6500 is. However, it is completely playable, and this is where you end up with these wonderful internet arguments where people say, you gotta upgrade, man, you're completely bottlenecked by your CPU, it's trash, throw that thing out, it's horrible. And then somebody else says, dude, I'm getting 100 frames per second. The game plays fine. What are you on about? You're both right. But I would point out that your RX 6600 is kind of wasted here unless you crank up the detail or go to 1440p because the CPU is holding it back. You have so much graphics card, you're just not getting your value out of it at these settings. However, this also means that you could drop down to an RX 5600 XT, which has 6 gigs of VRAM, which would be fine. And frankly, even an RX 580 would be just fine for this game at these settings. It probably wouldn't quite run at 100 frames a second. You might be more like 70 to 80 frames a second at times, depending on what's going on, but you totally could. And of course that makes sense because the RX 580 came out in 2017, same year as this game, so you would think it would run at a 1080p medium detail. If you need any further confirmation of how underutilized it all is, look at the power consumption. It's the third number over on both the CPU and the GPU. Now the CPU is of course a locked i5, it's 4 cores, 4 threads, it's running at 35 watts, it kind of always runs there even at 100% usage. Certain applications and programs can make it go a bit higher, but this thing's never going to be a 100-watt chip. The graphics card, however, is definitely loafing. We're getting about 80 watts out of it at the moment. This card uses an 8-pin PCI Express power connector. Now, it's not a 300-watt card, but it definitely will use more than 80 watts given a full load. So, look at the bright side. Energy efficiency for the win. Now we're going to move on to DirectX 11, and I want you to take a note of the frame time graph. Okay, the respawn point there, ignore. Now, From this point, watch the frame time graph. It is noticeably and dramatically better than what you were watching before. Our frame rate is higher as well, although again we're on a different map, so you cannot directly compare the average frame rate. But what you can do is look at the frame time graph and see how much nicer it is. DirectX 11 simply runs better in this game. Some games run better with 11, some run better with 12, some run better with Vulkan. Welcome to the world of graphical APIs. Something we used to deal with in the 90s all the time, but haven't had to deal with for some time. This game is a lot of fun, and it's kind of finished at this point, so you're not having to worry about a bunch more DLC and content coming out. But then again, it's not as popular as it used to be, so for online gameplay, you may or may not have trouble finding matches at off hours of the day. That being said, you can pick it up for next to nothing and have entirely too much fun on relatively modest hardware. Thank you all so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, do all the things, and let me know what game or hardware you want to see in the next video. Y'all have a lovely day.